Hi everyone, I have something to read to you. I don't expect this to be a popular video. The script has sat neglected on my laptop for a week, mostly because I would like to be liked, which is something of a weakness if what you think goes against the grain. But something someone said to me the other day about how if they weren't speaking their truth, they were diminished, reminded me that I can't abandon this rusty old canoe of mine or the sinking feeling that goes with it. I've seen a lot of anger and frustration being expressed by people who see and feel the net closing in and feel utterly powerless to stop it. The anger is, in my opinion, righteous and the frustration entirely appropriate. I myself was pulled up in response to my latest video for deriding inclusive capitalism without offering any solutions, which I think is fair comment. It is actually much easier to illuminate the problem than it is to conceive an effective means of derailing the accelerating freight train. All of this and other things have caused me latterly to reflect on what was my initial purpose in making these little presentations. People who have been kind enough to have the good misfortune to be with me from the beginning, or at least those who encountered me when I originally met Cindy Niles, find her on Facebook if you haven't already, know that our initial conversation was based on an attempt that I had been making to initiate a meaningful global conversation regarding amnesty. My desire was to get people to talk about the issue of whether, for reasons of benevolence or expedience, we should offer some sort of formalized amnesty to all those just doing their job. So doctors, nurses, local councillors, etc., in order to garner the support that would be required to prevent Agenda 2030 from full actualization. The premise from which I was starting was that if we don't offer these people who have been conditioned intergenerationally through the education system and always but laterally in the extreme by the mass media, to believe that compliance and morality are interchangeable. If we don't give these people a more desirable alternative than the one that they are being coerced into manufacturing, then we'll never have the necessary critical mass to end this collective madness. I'm aware that this hypothesis assumes that some level of unity is required for change to occur. I just want to clarify that I'm not suggesting that everyone agree on everything. I'm not asking for mass conformity in response to an attempt to generate mass conformity. I'm simply asking that we agree on a couple of key issues. That what is unfolding is bad for our children and needs to be stopped. That in order for this to happen, a critical mass of people have to perceive this to be the case. And that to prevent this from going any further, we need to provide a lifeboat to those who have been complicit so that they can jump ship. On reflection, when I spoke with Cindy, I think we addressed the first and second points, but we never got around to discussing the third because I didn't draw the conversation back and contextualize it within the original question. But perhaps I will be fortunate enough to secure some of her time again soon so that we can wade into this murky territory together. We talked at length about how important it is to try and illuminate to the general public, not just the horrors that are already unfolding, but also the ones that are being primed to unfold. And I think that Cindy is right. Certainly, I have learned more than I can verbally quantify from reading her material and been inspired, the establishment would say radicalized, into trying even harder to present to others the totality of the picture by using the information that she produces and through being linked by her to other incredibly fine minds who are also trying valiantly to shed light on and share all the various aspects and implications of the social engineering that's currently underway. I think, however, we need to discuss the possibility that while illuminating the problem for people may well increase the odds that they will jump ship. Perhaps it is a strategy that needs to evolve in order for us to garner sufficient support for Team Human. The anger and frustration that I spoke of earlier seems to increase in direct proportion to the extent to which sharing the verifiable information regarding what is happening, from vaccine injury all the way through to social and emotional governance, doesn't affect the change that it should. And I would posit that this is not because ever increasing numbers don't see what is occurring and feel at the very least uncomfortable with it, but because no one seems to be offering a viable alternative. And on the odd occasion that a conceptual viable alternative is proffered, the conversation always seems to start and end with a discussion about how best to prosecute and punish the people who are involved, i.e. them. So whatever preferable alternative there might be, it is perceived to be the greater of two evils because it would likely see them physically incarcerated. Of course, that this would be worse is in itself a misconception, because they would at least at some point be freed, whereas a digital prison is not just for Christmas, it's for life. At this juncture, I think it's important to reiterate that I'm not suggesting that the head honchos aren't subject to whatever justice an international court deems to be proportional to their crimes. Instead, I'm suggesting that we don't go after the guards with rhetoric that just doing your job is an insufficient excuse. It absolutely is an insufficient excuse. And if there had been no concerted effort to prime these people so that they would build their own and our prison, I would be less likely to suggest that forgiveness is the only appropriate response. The fact, however, that I went to university with aspiring medics, and I myself was a reluctant victim or product of the 1980s, 90s social and educational conditioning, gives me an insight into the depth of insecurity which has been purposefully fostered in youngsters to promote a desperation for approval, which can only be obtained by extreme compliance with the social, educational, professional system. One must aspire to the careers deemed worthy or lucrative and stop at nothing to achieve the approval of the never-ending respective figures of authority on the ladder of educational and professional success. Creating a society where competition for unobtainable approval with ever-moving goalposts is the perfect way to instill obedience. And in the main, it has worked. So I do feel strongly, and unfortunately, I might add, because I'm not Mother Teresa and their compliance has collectively impaired over 2 years of my children's lives, that punishment in this case is tantamount to victim blaming. It seems to me that the only way that we win back our world is by uniting the people, not over everything, but about the essential right to freedom for themselves and for their children. To this end, alongside illuminating and presenting information regarding what is happening, I'm making a plea to finer minds than mine to apply themselves to the not inconsiderable task of what else we can do to stop this. Too many people, I fear, are complicit for trying to scare them with the consequences, either in terms of what they're going to bequeath to their children and or Nuremberg-style retribution to achieve anything other than further entrenchment. I think that we have to offer them a better outcome, a safe place to defect to, one which won't punish them for being duped or for being greedy, which, as we all know, people have been conditioned into for generations. If we can somehow broker a truce, more than a truce, a compassionate understanding between those who don't comply and those who see but say nothing, then we might have the kind of critical mass that it takes to stop the agenda, which is all fine and well as a theoretical concept, but as to how it could be realized, the only idea I have is that we craft a treaty of amnesty in which the pledge of non-prosecution for anyone who can reasonably show coercion is documented. And we ask everyone who has any sort of profile in the fight against tyranny to put their name to it. In this way, we offer a lifeboat. As to where that lifeboat could take people in terms of the type of society that could be crafted thereafter, I throw it open to you and yours and your neighbors to discuss. Imagine if this was over and there was no threat of vaccination and or digital ID. What would you want? We're currently being ensnared into something called collectivism, A Monica birth, some would argue, from the classic marriage of two wrongs don't make a right. But what are your thoughts? What I need you to do is not just talk about what you want for our children, but once you've gathered together the composite wisdom of your homestead, please document it. Write your own short theory of society. Conceive a better world and make a concise, cohesive argument for it that others can read, learn from, and contribute to. This is how it was done by the elite. They decided what they wanted, defined and documented their aims, and went about the business of imposing these aims on society. They have a tremendous head start, and obviously only the very wealthy were invited to the table. But it's now the time of the ordinary, the free man, to rise and overthrow the last-ditch yoke of colonialism, which is all this is. It's an effort by the crumbling British Empire and her American allies to dominate the entire world. Globalization is just colonization, the obliteration of culture, homogeny, slavery. Everyone is now a minority group. Everyone is now a persecuted demographic. We all, at the very least, have this in common. Thank you for listening. I love you. I really do appreciate your listening. Thank you.